Welcome, and thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me and kind of discuss Black philanthropy and what it means to you. So, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Yvonne Clark, and I've known Angie all her life, and I'm glad to participate.
The first question, Merriam-Webster defines philanthropy as goodwill to fellow members of the human race, an act or gift done or made for humanitarian purposes, an organization distributing or supported by funds set aside for humanitarian purposes. After hearing this, how do you think Black philanthropy is similar or different from the definition I just read?
I've looked at this in from two perspectives: the receiver and the giver. And in Black philanthropy, um, you can look at it as there are Black people that are giving and doing, and they're the benefactor, so to speak. And you can look at it as there's Black people that are the receiver.
Mhm.
And in as I was thinking about it, I think I thought more along people of color,
Mhm.
because usually when there's somebody reaching out to Black people, it's a group of people. They realize it's the people of color that are suffering.
Mhm.
But yeah, I looked at it those kind of ways, and to me, Black philanthropy is focusing on that group of people that you've indicated down the line is only 2% in giving and receiving.
Mhm.
So that's the way I look at Black philanthropy.
Okay. All right. All right. My next question is, many people think of philanthropists as people who make large cash donations. Even now, Black-led, Black benefiting US organizations receive less than 2% of philanthropic dollars. How do you think Black philanthropy has helped fill this void?
But one thing that just popped in my mind is, I think one thing people need to realize is that it's not just the big gifts,
Mhm.
it's the small gifts. Sometimes people don't give because they say, they can't use my $5 or my $20, so they don't give.
Right.
But if you give $20 on a regular, especially on a regular basis, the person receiving that is so happy. They
Yes.
can put it in their budget. There's never a too small of amount.
Yes.
So that's one thing that just popped in my head. The other thing is that in America, people of color are looked at in differently. This is my perspective,
Mhm.
differently than people of color around the world.
Mhm.
For some reason, in America, it's okay to give to people of color around the world,
Mhm.
whether it's Africa, India, in any other place. But here, when you talk about giving, we become those people that only want a handout. So
Mhm.
we don't want to give,
Right.
you know. So we need to change that perspective. We need to realize that there are Black people, people of color, that are just as, God, I hate that word needy, but they have needs just like everybody else around the world that's poor or
Right.
that's lacking
Right.
in something. And so we need to change that perspective for one thing. Focus on the Black people or the people of color that are in need. I
Mm.
guess that's here
Right.
as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Our next question, the Greek root of philanthropy may be literally translated as loving people. Can you share an example of Black philanthropy that doesn't involve a cash donation?
Yes. When you think about other types of gifts, clothes, food, all those types of needs, bedding, people have needs. sometimes they're temporary, sometimes they're long-term, but they have needs. Cars, you know, you see, give a car. There's just so many material things other than money that people need and that people have and are thinking about just tossing it. Um, there's a guy that comes around and picks up whatever you're getting rid of. So I sent him a text and asked him, what do you do with this stuff? Because I like to think about somebody else using it. And he said, some I repair and sell, some I give away, some I just toss if it's just no use. So I was just so glad to hear that he considered it being used again. You know, even if he's earning some money off of it or if he's giving it away, I was just glad to hear that. The other thing is love. You know, sometimes we only think about material things, but there are a lot of people out there that need love.
Yeah.
They need hugs. They need to know somebody cares. You know, and if you just give that, that's a lot. Give a little bit of your heart to somebody else, and that's a lot.
All right, thank you. All right, next question. Even though the term Black philanthropy has only been around for a couple of decades, the practice has its origins in African traditions and practices. What are your origins in Black philanthropy?
Probably started with the jail and prison and mission ministry.
Okay.
You know, going to those types of places and then realizing that it's and donating. We went as a part of a group that preached Christianity, you know, and then I started realizing when I went to those places that they needed money too. So I continued the ministry, and I think that was kind of the love part. But then I started kind of regularly donating to, and as I think that's where it started, and then it kind of grew from there. You know, because once your mind is in that, once you're in that mindset, you start to see more, and you start to reach out more, and so I think that's how I started.
Okay. And just because I know you so well, I would probably say you started long, long before that. Because I can remember, just coming to your house as a kid and, being treated like I was your child. And it wasn't just me, it was a whole group of us that would come and spend weekends or, whatever you had for your kids, you had for us. And so I think sometimes we think of in the Black community when long before we had, lots of money, we had lots of love, like you said, for each other and lots of advice. And you are an excellent storyteller. And so you always made sure that we knew the history of, whether it was biblical or whether it was African American history or if it was just the community in the neighborhood and the stories of the people that grew up on 24th Street.
That's interesting. Even though I said love was a part of it, I didn't really think about that. Some people they don't understand my family because my family is big. You know, I truly believe in extended family. So yeah, and you have been my child. Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about that, but I'm glad. I'm glad you brought that up because it makes me feel good that something I did that was right.
All right. And the last question. Thank you so much for giving of your time, your talents, and your treasure. What advice do you have for future generations regarding Black philanthropy?
I got to thinking about there's two areas that have greatly decreased in particularly in the Black community, and that's neighborhood and family. And I would suggest that people start working on those areas. And and I'm not necessarily talking about developing an organization,
Mm-hmm.
but just, sometimes we avoid our neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm guilty of that sometimes, but we need to reach out and get to know our neighbors. Once we start getting to know our neighbors, that's how the neighborhood starts to develop, because you get to know their kids or their grandkids and their needs. And so we need to start reaching out instead of isolating to ourselves, being afraid to reach out. They're just gonna get up my business. No, we need to reach out. We need to reach out in person, not on Facebook, but in person. The other thing is, in looking at your questions, I started evaluating my own giving and what I did in that area. And I started realizing that I don't I don't specifically focus in on Black philanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
I just, it's what I do, usually within what I do, I make sure I'm benefiting, the Black folks. In one organization that I support, a lot of my donations go to Africa, and I'm focusing in on that. But the donation itself, the purpose itself is supporting the word going out, the children learn about the Lord Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
But inside of that, I try and make sure I support Wayne County.
Mm-hmm.
So inside of that, I do, but not really focusing on. So I'm going to have to reach out and explore, research Black philanthropy, organizations that are focusing on it to increase that 2%.
Mm-hmm.
That's ooh, that
It,
is tiny.
it is.
I mean, we're even in the minimal surveys with at least 15% of the population.
Yeah.
So that I got to focus in on that so that I can increase that. I somehow or another.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else you want to say before we close out?
Yes, I am so glad. I know that the store isn't open yet.
Yeah.
But the organization is active, it's doing a lot of diverse things, a lot of areas, and efficiently and well. Anything that you have done as RICs has been so organized and so well represented. I really appreciate.
Oh,
And you have my full support, whatever I can do, because you all are really working it. And I'm so glad to see that. And you're not only focusing on, I don't know what percentage of, probably poor folks in America are more like 90%, but you're also focusing on Black people because there's a great need there.
yes.
Black people and people of color.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
And one thing I've learned is we might be 15% in America, but we're about 90% around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that has changed my perspective,
Right.
because it's made me look outside of America
Mm-hmm.
and make me want to encourage Black Americans even more, especially young people.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look outside of America, you don't feel like a minority anymore.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, but you're doing a great job, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to keep praying as well as supporting.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.